The first thing, one of the most common requests that we get is, can you make me a viral video? And generally, as soon as they ask that question, my answer is, well, as a matter of fact, no. Why is that? Because a viral video essentially is, by definition, it's something that's targeting everyone. You want to have 100,000 people, you want to see 1 million people see it, you want it to just cover the world. The problem is, the chances of your video reaching 1 million of the right people is very, very slim. In order to do that, it's got to be either very funny, very chutzpahdik, very offbeat, very sexual, which has its own issues. There are a lot of different things that can trigger a viral video. Generally, it's not the kind of things that you're looking to do. You're looking for a targeted, specific message that's going to get the right message for the right person at the right time. A viral video, by definition, is for the masses. It appeals to the lowest common denominator. And essentially, if you're not thinking about the particular people that you're looking to focus on, you're not going to get the results that you want. You may have a lot of numbers. Your statistics may jump. You could have 50,000 people the first week. That's terrific. But in terms of the productivity and what that yields is generally going to be much, much lower. Second, this is real stuff. There are many companies that will tell you that they put a lot of money into printed materials, into brochures, into lectures, into booths at trade shows. And as soon as they put out a video that really explains what it is they do in a way that's portable, right? It has their voice, it has their own pace, it has exactly the way they want it to be shown. They say the results are 10 times more than any of these things that they had spent money on independently. So it's something that you need to convince, and this is very difficult sometimes for the people who hold the purse strings in your organizations. A lot of the time they'll say, well, a video, it's a nice thing, but if our website explains it well enough, it'll do the trick. And the truth is that a good website is important. I mean, it's crucial, but a lot of the time people aren't reading all of that text and they don't have the patience for it. And a video is basically a way to kind of inject it immediately, quickly, straight to the point with maximum effectiveness. So in terms of budgets, it's something that really has to be managed in terms of a real budget issue, not something cute on the side that's the first thing to be cut as soon as the numbers don't work out. Next, we get, I would say, 3/4 of the clients that we've worked with, as part of the beginning, with the first time they see a script, the first reaction is, this is really great. I like the way that you're putting this. This is a different story. It's not really the way that we usually say it. And I say, well, that's a good thing, right? I mean, you're bringing somebody from the outside who, with all due respect, if you're working in an organization, it doesn't matter whether it's nonprofit, high tech, anything. You're working there all day in the same position with the same vocabulary, the same terminology. You're too close to it. And having somebody come out who's going to really study what you're doing, give you a different perspective, and put their spin on it, a lot of the time it will shake things up fairly dramatically. But the minute that you can accept it, and the minute you can say, you know what, this will change things. We're going to have to redo this part of our brochure. We're going to have to redo some of our PowerPoints, whatever it is. But a lot of the time, it's the right move, and it's a refreshing way to change it. We think of a video as a story. And it's telling your story in a different way. It doesn't matter, okay? We had somebody 2 weeks ago who literally, we were finishing a video for them. It was an animated video, and the CEO showed it to his mother-in-law, okay? His mother-in-law, he told me, she's 83 years old, and it was a high-tech company. Okay? This has nothing to do with, she's not the target audience. She didn't understand, her mother language was Russian, I think, originally. And she said, there are too many men, there aren't enough women, which didn't mean anything. I had somebody this morning who we were also finishing up a video, and he said, I think we need the voiceover done in an Australian accent because it's more international. I said, well, where did you get that from? He said, our SEO people, our technical people on the website suggested it. Okay, your SEO people aren't really marketing specialists generally. They don't necessarily know about linguistic science and all that. And the moral of the story is that choose the people that have the input. The worst mistake you can make is to work on it internally in the small marketing and communications group in your nonprofit, and at the end you show it to whoever's in charge, and he says, this is great, but I think we really need to emphasize X instead of Y. It happens all the time, and it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter who it is. If you decided in the beginning that the person who licks the envelopes and mails them is somebody whose input you really want, great. Make sure that they're in it from the beginning, from the initial script to the finished script to the initial drafts of the video until it's complete. This is probably one of the most important components because you're always going to get input, you're always going to get advice. The day that you accept it and you pay the bill and you put it out on the web, you're going to keep getting advice. But if you have the people who are the check mark people defined in front, it'll make it much, much more successful and much smoother. Defining your theater. If this is going to be shown on YouTube, right, or on your home page, and you're going to be showing it this big, you want to make sure that the objects, the people, if you're doing filming and you're doing headshots, if you're doing text, if you wanted to show newspaper headlines, for instance, it's not going to be readable. A whole newspaper page won't be readable if you're viewing it this big. So if you're going to be showing it at a trade show, for instance, on a screen this big, you don't have to worry about it. Detail will come through. It's one of these things where it's very important to make very clear to whoever's producing your video what size, what it's going to be used for. If it's at a trade show where there's going to be a lot of noise, you may not be able to have sound, so you may want to have captions across the bottom. There are a lot of those variables, and many, many times people will build a video without thinking about how it's going to be used and where it's going to be used. It's very important. If you think it's going to be on your laptop in front of potential donors or whatever it is, terrific. You're going to have a fairly large screen, and it'll be high resolution, and you'll be fine. But it's just one of the sort of technical ingredients that goes into the decision, and it's important to bring it up. One of the most challenging things for any company putting together a video is during the script writing process. The natural inclination is to say, well, the video is about what we do, so I'm going to say, we are organization X. There's a problem. These people have X, Y, and Z of an issue. We're there to help them. Please support us so that we can do it. That's fine. The problem is you could do that on your homepage. You could do it in a brochure. You can do that in a couple of sentences. What we like to think about is the notion of storytelling. In the ideal situation, if you can, putting the viewer in the story. Even if it's a matter of saying, haven't you X, Y, and Z, or many of us, very much sort of an inclusion process. Depending, again, on what kind of organization you are, that sometimes is more difficult and less difficult. We're working on a script right now for a company with the medical treatment website, and it's a fairly straightforward, boring product. I mean, basically you log in and you find doctors and treatments and it tells you where to go. And we're doing it in terms of a first person of an 11-year-old girl talking about her mother having a medical emergency and not knowing what to do, and her mother is afraid to go online, and she's showing her the whole process, and it's much more sympathetic, much more human. And Root Funding, who was here, who spoke this morning, and Gary Unger, we did a video for them, which is one of my very favorites, and it really does that. It takes two people on two different floors of a building, each has their own nonprofit, and they each talk about, and it talks about how one of them succeeded this way and one succeeded the other way. And you sort of and it's sort of funny. There are ones for platypuses and ones for whatever it is. But it gives you that sense of, it gives you that sense of it being sort of relevant to life in terms of where you live in your environment, as opposed to just, here's a list of what we do. Storytelling, it makes all the difference. Too short, you're not going to get the point across. Many clients come to us and say, 60-second video, please. Problem is, once you have an intro and what we call an outro, you knock off about 10, 12 seconds. You're left with about 40 seconds. If you have 3 points to make, you have about 15 seconds for each one. That's about a sentence and a half. You can't get your story, generally, into something that short unless it's very, very, very defined, very precise. But when you're going to tell a complete story about, here's the problem, here's what we do, here's why you should care, generally, you're talking about somewhere between 1.5 minutes and 2.5 minutes. Closer to 2, ideally. We won't get into it in detail now, but in a B2B environment where it's someone's job to watch this video so that he can learn about your product or whatever it is you're doing, Generally, he'll take a little bit longer, and you can then make it 2.5 minutes, even 3 minutes, because people in offices whose job it is to watch these things are willing to do it. If it's somebody who you're interested in raising money from, if it's somebody who is a sort of a general consumer, you're kind of trying to grab a couple minutes out of his time, more than about 1.5 minutes usually is the threshold where people start to sort of lose patience. Obviously, the funnier it is, the more interesting it is, the more entertaining it is, the more interesting you make it up front, the more you can grab them, and then the longer you have. So that's a little bit flexible. I guess the moral of the story here is don't try to define in the beginning exactly how long your video is going to be. You've got to discuss it, figure out how the script is going to work, what the goals are, and that answer will come up. And yes, that does affect pricing with whoever you're going to work with, because a 60-second video, it takes a lot less time than a 3-minute video to produce. This is the toughest part for all of us. You have a lot to say. You probably all have brochures and booklets that have dozens, if not hundreds of paragraphs about everything that you do, and that's great. You have to be able to whittle it way down. And a lot of the time, that's our job. Someone who's writing the script for you, who's working on that script, looks at all of your material, boils it down, and you have to be prepared to say, okay, I'll leave that out. Or if I need to, I'll do a separate video that covers those points. Not putting stuff in is probably the biggest challenge of the script writing process, but it's probably, it's one of the very, very most important. Throw curveballs. Again, this has to do with being a brochure. You need, basically, it's easy to, when I speak in the States about this, I use the word chutzpah, and then I have to give a whole spiel about what chutzpah is. Spiel about. But basically, you need some chutzpah, whether, again, it's humor, whether it's something they didn't expect to hear about, whether it's imagery that's just completely offbeat and they're kind of looking at it, trying to figure out what you're getting to. Obviously, you have to get to the point quickly. But you want to do something different. Again, if you're making a video version of your brochure, it's not going to, get people to kind of raise an eyebrow and say, wait a minute, I need to get involved with this, or this is something that really, really clicks with me. You've got to think outside of the box, do things both visually and in terms of the script that are a little bit different. And again, this is not a comfort zone for the most senior people in your company, because they're very comfortable with the way they've been telling your story. And I'm sure it works to a certain level, but this is the way that we wake people up. Finally, you need a call to action at the end. The simplest is giving them your website, giving them a phone number, something that basically will trigger them, not just pick up the phone and call, but tell you something about themselves, some way engage, even if it's a contest. I mean, things like that. People like doing that, even if it's a little bit cheesy. But something to basically say to them, not just pick up the phone, click here, come through and do something for us. And it can also just be the message. It can be, we've done a series of videos for the Gift of Life Foundation, the bone marrow folks. And for them, it always ends with something like, save a life, help Johnny here, something very, very concrete that brings it home. And that's it. That's the 10 commandments of your online marketing video.